Welcome to an introduction on the French philosopher Francois-Marie Arouet, better known by his pen name Voltaire. Voltaire is the most appealing of all the philosophers. His inimitable wit tickled, excited, and not frequently scorched his readers. The features of his writing: skepticism, humor, satire, and a stinging criticism. Through his pen, he led a crusade against tyranny and bigotry. His rebellious and heretical writings kept him on the move. Yes, Voltaire was always on the move. His writings brought in a lampoon, a ridicule upon the regent who was in power of France at the time. And because of that, he was imprisoned in the Bastille fort. And then he was exiled. The 3 years of his exile he spent in England. Perhaps these 3 years were among the most glorious times in the life of Voltaire. While in England, he took time to learn the English language. He got acquainted with the political system there. He familiarized himself with the thoughts of Locke and Isaac Newton, the two English philosophers. He was influenced by the neoclassical writers and especially the plays of Shakespeare. He used to watch the performances. And the euphoria of the glorious revolution, the bloodless revolution of 1684, impacted him. He appreciated the religious tolerance. There were many religious sects in England. Even among the Christians, there were the Protestants, the Catholics, and the Puritans, the Quakers. But there was a religious tolerance in England. And also, there's the harmonious functioning of the three systems: the monarchy, the House of Commons, and the upper house of nobles. And he had an appreciation for the system of justice, jurisprudence. Why did Voltaire feel so much for all these? Because these elements contrasted with the systems in France. So Voltaire decided to write about all these things. That brings us to his major works: Philosophical Letters on the English, the Letters Philosophicus, Zaire, and Candid. We'll take the first, Philosophical Letters on the English. This is his first contribution to the encyclopedia. You will perhaps remember the encyclopedia contained many articles which were outwardly academic, but they had a depth which was used to attack the existing systems in France. So this document, Philosophical Letters on the English, is a covert attack on the cruder institutions in France. The second of his work, Letters Philosophicus, it is noted for its sparkling wit, biting irony, and crisp, pithy style. And it is actually a model of the 18th century French prose. In this work, there is a comment on the religion in England. An Englishman, like a free man, goes to heaven by whatever route he chooses. A seemingly innocent remark. But this points to the control exercised by the church in France and in many other European countries. Of course, this book created problems. It gave rise to a furor on religious and political grounds. It contained obvious passages of heresy, and it was downright libelous. It laughs at the rite of baptism. It praises the Quakers who did not have a firm ecclesiastical organization or priests or sacraments. This book resulted in his arrest, and it was burned in public by the hangman. The third work, Zaire, it's a play on the conflict of divided loyalties. It illustrates the accident of faith, the faith of a person that is just an accident. You're born into a system, you may grow up in a system, and that becomes your faith. When you go through the summary of the play, you will understand this accident of faith. So it proves that or states that the dogmatism of religion that is irrelevant. In spite of the religious situations in France, Zaire was well received. Even the Queen had appreciation for the work. Zaire is the story of a Christian infant girl captured in the Crusades. I request you to pause this video for a while. Go to the textbook, page 25 and page 26, or you can visit the blog post you see here. Please read a summary of the work. This is Candide, the magnum opus, the masterpiece of Voltaire. This is a novella. It's translated into English, and the various titles given in English may help you to understand a bit more about it. Sounds the note of optimism. This is set in the picaresque mode, where it describes the adventures and also the debilitating experiences of Candide, the bastard nephew of a baron. It's also a Bildungsroman, a novel of growth. The changes in the character. Because it is from Voltaire, obviously, it has to be a satire. The plot is improbable. You can't expect that to happen in real life. However, it has got a historical base. There was an earthquake in Lisbon on the 1st of November 1755. And it also brings into its picture the 7 Years' War from 1756 to 1763. Both these incidents, one geographical, one historic, are considered as motifs of this work. Candide is a burlesque on the philosophy of Leibniz, a German mathematician and thinker. His philosophy is one of optimism. This world is the best possible world God could have created. Hence, all is for the best. In the best of all possible worlds. This is the best of all possible worlds. So everything that happens here will be for the best. A note of optimism. This philosophy was countered by a French thinker, Pierre Bayle, who argues that reason should not be used to make sense of evil. What is optimism? Even when there is evil, you feel that everything is going to be good. So, Pierre Bayle opposed to this idea of optimism. Now, in this particular work, you will see these two ideas coming into conflict. Candid, it was scandalous, but it enjoyed a great success. It was published in secret, and immediately after its publication, it was banned to the public because it contains religious blasphemy, political sedition, and intellectual hostility. Have a look at the important characters in this particular work. Once again, it'll be good to pause for a while. Do go through the plot summary, which is posted in the blog. You'll also have this in the textbook. You can refer to either of the sources. When we analyze the particular work, Candide, we see the satire of Voltaire coming into play. The views regarding the optimistic view of the world when reality is shocking. The situation of France was that. There were people trying to find an optimistic view of France when matters were in a mess. Voltaire satirizes that in Candide. Then there is a situation or the criticism, a criticism on the situations of war, oppression, persecution, and immorality practiced both by the ruling class and the people of religion. If you go through the work, you'll find people holding the apex positions of religion and the state, given to all sorts of evil and immorality. The conclusion can have two opposing interpretations: a gloomy view of the world or a bright view. The work, the novel ends with a reference to the garden. Let us cultivate the garden. You must have noticed that in the summary. Let us cultivate our garden. It started with the philosophical note of optimism. All's going to be best with the best of all worlds. But when the novella ends, you are confined to a garden. Let us cultivate our garden. So this conclusion can have two opposing interpretations: a gloomy view or a bright view. The garden can stand for many things: the earthly Eden of man's own creation. Situations in France were slowly moving towards that. Or it can even be in the encyclopedia cultivated by Voltaire and his friends, keeping away from the persecutions and censorship of the external world. Our textbook concludes this discussion on Voltaire with a reference to Dr. Johnson and his work Rasselas. It's amusing that Rasselas and Candide have lots of similarities. You may even feel that one is an imitation of the other, but no. In the blog post, you will find a summary of Rasselas. A reading of that will help you understand this better. Samuel Johnson felt that there is more power in Candide than anything written by Voltaire. There are many similarities between these two works, but there are differences as well, especially with regard to the views on religion. It is something strange. These two authors, separated by nationality, language, political and religious bias, should have, at about the same time, preoccupied themselves with the disturbing panorama of human misery and the ubiquitous presence of evil. This proves one thing: enlightenment is not something limited to France. It was a spirit throbbing in the hearts and minds of many thinkers throughout Europe and perhaps throughout the world. Thank you.